Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Joshino and I'm here today to talk about the future of Paladins in 2019 and also a discussion I had with the developers, specifically Evil Mojo Martini or Garrett, about the future of Paladins, how they're going to address the burst meta, reveal on everything, and some small, yet other hugely impactful changes, more important in my opinion than any new map, event or champions coming to the realm. So this chat began off as a private one and I got a lot of information on what was coming next, though I can't talk about all of the things I will be discussing in this video, which I had double checked with Garrett were okay to talk about and reveal to the public, so we'll just discuss all of that. Everything talked about was hypothetical, but they were very positive that a part of this would come out early next year, 2019. Not that you didn't know what year it was currently, unless you're messing with the space-time continuum. If so, just stop it. Most of the changes I discuss will be around removing card effects that are in the item shop currently, though something to bear in mind as I delve deeper into it all is that the cards and loadouts will remain, just that mostly the especially frustrating effects and sort of cookie cutter stuff is hypothetically being replaced by something else and the amount of cards will remain. As always, be sure to let me know all of your thoughts below in the comments section below and on Twitter or wherever you're watching this, and I'm pretty sure the developers will be interested in feedback on these potential big changes. Without further ado, let's dive into the future. So one current issue highlighted by Hyres Martini or Garrett in the chat was that currently the time to kill feels inconsistent during the match. This is in part caused by cards in champions decks that give healing reduction, where champions Leon can reduce healing by 90% at the very start of the match, just from weapon shots. And I mean a lot of other champions have cauterized cards in their decks on abilities, usually those with short cooldowns. Take Cassie, for example, who has often been in the spotlight as a bursty buzzkill. Her blast shot, whilst amped up in damage with the impulse talent, also can reduce the healing of an enemy player by 75% with a card fully leveled up in a loadout, and this is the most popular one to use with that certain loadout. Part of the time to kill equation has to include healers and how much they can prolong the life of a player, especially at the start of a match. Not just when a friendly champion limps around a corner spamming the voice callouts for attention. VHS. Am I right, everyone? In short, part of the frustration with time to kill is also the often confusing amounts you're being hit by these big healing reductions. Anyway, onto the solution. The idea is that by taking out these cards out of the loadouts, it would mean that there's a much more consistent time to kill versus heal to save tug of war that is always going on during the game. So at the start of the match, healers will be at their strongest, and progressively if the teams build up cauterize, they'll become less and less able to prolong their compadres' lives. It means that at the start of the games will be more probing, dueling, and less punishing to enemies that perhaps overextend, whereas as the match draws closer to a conclusion, things will be more tense and frantic, and the game will sort of have this sort of progression of just sort of chilled out until super intense and hyperactive towards the end. I do think this in part does address the burst issue. Part of it is the randomness, and this would tackle that without directly delving into champions' base kits too thoroughly. I mean, there have been little changes here and there, the removal of Androx's head to roll extra damage, and the aforementioned Cassie impulse nerf, plus the Deadshot Willow and Kinessa Eagle Eye nerf have been baby steps to improve the feeling of the game so that you don't get instantly one-shot by something or completely burst without recourse. Though this particular case is something I think for a long time has stemmed from the initial implementation of legendary cards and talents. So if you didn't know, in beta there were no legendary cards, just normal loadout cards, which did take away a lot of the more game-changing effects and cards that were in the old original open beta, and often meshing two together or making them an even stronger version of the old loadout cards, which meant that the loadout cards became a little more generic as time went on. And I think there may also be, in my particular situation and a lot of the players, some rose-tinted glasses aspect to the game as to how we remembered the game compared to how it is now. I don't think Paladins is in a terrible state currently. I think it's actually a lot better than it has been for a long while. But in early Paladins beta, it seemed to me to be in a very good spot in terms of how you engage with enemy players. Paladins is and was a very different experience to the close rival Overwatch, in that headshots for the most wouldn't insta-kill somebody, and dodge some of the frustration that surrounded that. Sure, Paladins does rely a bit more on the abilities of champions too, but it felt that if you're on a 1v1 duel, it often came down to a few seconds of dodging and tagging that would culminate in a very happy victor, no, not that victor, and not a too peeved off loser. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a good idea as it will take the game slightly back to what it was like, with the emphasis on time to kill in the healer versus anti-heal tug of war being something that is more consistent during the match and isn't completely weighed off right at the start of the match, so you're not going to have 90% just straight away out of the blue. All of what I've said also applies to the fact that they'll be considering taking away the Wrecker or anti-shield related cards. It will essentially mean that the time to kill will also be increased for tanks and those behind their shields, until of course later in the match where everyone has either Wrecker 3 or Cauterize 3. And most of the arguments for removing the anti-healing also apply here to Wrecker in the fact that they'll likely bring up the time to kill. So again, I think it would streamline the game and make the flat matches flow more like they used to, or at least a little bit more that way. Though to play devil's advocate, would this lead to tanks being too tanky and maybe even having death ball comps of 3 tanks? Well, we'll just have to see. That leads on to the other changes that were discussed. The other big one I've talked a lot about in my videos and on streams is the frustration of reveal being built into almost all champions cards somewhere. So I think especially flankers have suffered from these implementations, as a lot of damaged champions can tag the flankers and track wherever they go. Plus, between nerfing mobility, this issue, it is hard for flankers to do what they were designed to do, flank. Even if, say, you are brushed by a stray Victor bullet, then you'll be spotted for an unreasonable amount of time for a few seconds, and usually means that it's almost impossible to close the gap or sneak around to actually get into your effective range. And I do wonder whether this has made flankers over more mobile damage champions like Cassie less viable in the past few patches, and also leading to trying to increase their quote close quarters potential to new heights in their burst damage. I mean, even if Androxus and Eevee have still been seen use at higher level play, I just think overall limiting the reveal to big ults like Cassie and to certain abilities of champions plus for invisible champions specifically in Illuminate will also allow both Skye and Charlene to be so easily counted over card choice over, say, a specific champion. Although I don't still know how I feel about so much of the Strix reveal, say compared to Vivian's where the mines are much easier to destroy. Perhaps the flare legendary for Strix should only apply extra damage if the flare hits a champion directly before landing, so that the counter is always just to walk over the flares as a frontline or someone that can heal themselves. I mean, what do other people think about the state of Strix at the moment? Be sure to let me know below, and also about taking out most of the reveal cards. Again, I do feel that even balance-wise, if there isn't such an obvious heavy fix if you remove the reveal, it's more that being revealed all of the time is very frustrating, and it's a frustrating feeling. It just makes the maps feel, with their 3 flank routes in most of them and limited ways to peek, feel extremely claustrophobic, whereas they're actually relatively open compared to Overwatch and other 10 people-ish team-based shooters, which are usually quite tight. So these were the big 3 that I thought it was important to talk about. However, overarchingly, the idea the developers were floating around was that removing the majority of loadout cards that have effects that can be bought through the item shop in the game would be the way forward. Something worth mentioning is that we, and I mean that by me, Garrett, and everyone else listening into at the time, Super Bounce and Dr. Joshino, so another streamer and a Reddit mod, didn't discuss these as thoroughly, and also what the replacements for these cards would be, as there are so many. Even if it was just Cauterize, Wrecker and Reveal, there'd be a lot of cards to replace. In my eyes, hopefully with more low health resets or augmentations of cards to abilities with knockbacks and things. Be sure to let me know all of your speculations or ideas of what these could be, even for individual champions if you have any. Though the item shop does cover damage reduction, healing amplification, movement speed, cooldown reduction, and so on, that are all purchasable. There's so many effects that are in the cards. Whether this would mean that the cards in the item shop would also be buffed, seeing as things like Haven and Blast Shields were nerfed quite heavily in early 2018, I think, as I guess partly because of the stacking them with loadout cards in your actual decks. That would be a big question mark there. I also don't personally know whether Chronos is so much of an issue in terms of cards, as it's fun to sort of emphasize a single ability in your build to create several styles of play in the match where you're like reducing the cooldown of it. Also, there is some nuance in, say, a Resilience Makoa into a Bomb King, Pip, or set of champions that have lots of stuns and slows to take away from the frustration of playing against those, and having a sort of meta play where you're picking loadouts to counter enemy champion picks. And I think maybe, just playing devil's advocate again, there could be some of the depth of the game lost, just a little bit. And there has been a lot of uproar in Overwatch in particular about stuns and crowd control being a bit of a pain in that game, where they don't have anything, don't have resilience at all. So although, again, everything can be changed within the item shop, and it may be that it's just more that it is important during the match to go for certain items. The other thing to think about is that with 4 big talent cards for each champion, and it already being difficult to balance them for all champions currently, how will these fare with cookie cutter ones being plucked out? I did get the feeling at the time with OB64 when things were low, it was a bit of a rushed decision, but here we are with 4 of these talent cards. My opinion would be to take one out and just save everyone the hassle, maybe even dissolving some into the normal loadout cards again, or even just getting rid of talent cards altogether and just sort of dissolving them into the loadout cards. But that, I think, is too much of a big ask, but that'd be going back to the open beta Paladins. But that isn't really something that they discussed. Finally, the other big change alongside these changes that was floated as being a possibility, and this sounded much less probable than the loadout card changes, which sounded almost like a sure thing, especially the Cauterized Wrecker and Reveal, was opening up the item store so that you'd no longer be restricted to one item per type. So for example, you could buy all 3, Blast Shield, Haven and Resilience, making some frontliners super tanky, or at the very least perhaps matching what may be lost within the loadout setups. You will also be able to buy both Cauterized and Wrecker, so as a damage dealer or flanker you may prioritise the most aggressive cards without having to worry so much about one picking up earlier on, or trying to balance them out, I guess. I actually personally think this would be quite a good idea if they were to revamp all of the cards anyway. It would still mean there was a choice in which item you prioritise first, how much into each one, but that it would open a lot of things up during the match. Worth mentioning is they did talk about adding a feature to sell an item at full price after you buy it in the spawn room, so accidental purchases could be gotten rid of, or if a teammate takes Wrecker, then they force you to take Cauterized when you're probably a champion better with Wrecker, then you can actually just switch over, if you see what I mean, so you don't get the loss for perhaps not your fault. They also talked about being able to sell it for a loss after you have been out and in the battle, potentially, and I think this would be a great quality of life change that has no downsides and wish it would be in already. This is pretty much it from what I can talk about coming in the future, or at least what I'm sure I can share without annoying Evil Mojo. They're actually relatively open. There was no non-disclosure agreement, NDA or anything, but I don't want to ruin anything they are not sure on, and they basically talked about not talking about certain things. I haven't seen the next champion after Imani properly, so hopefully we can still do some spicy speculation on that soon, although I might get some accusations that I've actually seen it by the developers, which I'd be worried about, but I haven't actually seen it. Either way, I think most of the stuff will be a great quality of life addition to the game. Without a shadow of a doubt, the Reveal, Healing Reduction and Wrecker cards being out of loadouts I think should just go, though I'm not sure on the total revamp of the item shop and other effects, but we would lean towards it being a good idea. There are some other changes to champions, like making champions fire more but do damage less, making them more bursty up close, things like Lex and Androxus, that have shifted from the early beta, and also getting rid of movement to a certain degree, but that wasn't really talked about too much. But as always, let me know all of your thoughts and what you'd like to see in 2019 and all of these things. What would you do in their shoes? How would you approach it differently, or do you actually totally agree? Be sure to let me know. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, consider subscribing for more, and I will see you all next time. Thank you all very much for watching. Joshino.